Hey everybody, I'm Mike Mahoney. I'm a professional wood turner and I'd like to talk to you today about oak. If you're like me, you live in an area where there's a bunch of oak trees, and I think oak is very underutilized for wood turners. I think we just think it's blasé because there's so much of it. Well, if you quarter saw an oak log, you can get these beautiful flecks in the wood, and I use a lot of it to make platters. And if you look at this end grain oak piece, this is a valley oak that grows in my area, you can see these medullary rays that emanate out of the center. If we can slice through those rays, that's where we get the flecks. Now, looking at this log, in order to get a platter blank, I'm looking at it and I see this little pith crack right there, and I think economically it would be best to run my saw right through there. Well, to get a 2-inch platter blank, I'm going to take another cut 2 inches away, slicing right through those medullary rays, and that'll create those flecks. Now, another platter blank can be had here. Another platter blank can be had here. These are all the best quarters for wood turners. Now look what's going on here. The annual rings going through your platter blanks are basically straight lines. And that makes for great utility platters because when this wood dries, and it won't cup or warp like other boards. Say if you took a platter blank way over here off the side, well, the annual rings are going through that like that. Therefore, that piece of wood will have a tendency to cup or warp. A couple more thoughts about oak wood in general. There's hundreds of varieties of oaks across North America. You may know them by their common names, whether it's valley oak, blue oak, black oak, huckleberry oak, scrub oak. Those common names don't actually tell us what type of oak we're working with. Simply speaking, there's two types of oaks. There's white oaks and there's red oaks. How would we know the difference? Well, white oaks tend to have a nice soft lobe on their leaf, whereas red oaks will have a sharp point on their ends. That will lead us to what we know what type of oak we're working with. Well, as a bowl maker who's making items of utility, I would probably want to work with white oaks because it has a much smaller pore in the wood. So therefore liquid won't pass through it as easily as with a red oak. Red oaks have a much larger pore. So if you make a salad bowl out of red oak, there's a possibility that liquid will pass through it and affect the table underneath it, and that's not good. You can mitigate the problem with red oak through the finishing process. If I was working with red oak making utilitarian items, I would coat that red oak piece with polyurethane. Good couple thick coats, and that'll keep the liquid from passing through it. So these are some platter blanks that I made, but you can see these flecks. This one in particular is beautiful because I went straight through the medullary ray. Anyway, I hope you use oak, and I'm going to make a platter for you, a finished platter for you today so you can see how I do that. I hope you will utilize oak for yourself because it's a fantastic wood and it's so easy to sand and it finishes really well. Let's go to it. This is a 480-year-old oak tree that fell down in my neighborhood. This is going to make thousands of utility items. I'm going to quarter saw all of it. I'm cutting 16-inch lengths off of this piece that fell off the tree. That'll make a nice platter blank. There's the medullary ray. It's in a light area right there. I'm going to mark that now, and I'm going to try to drive my saw right through that medullary ray all the way through the other side. That's very difficult to do, and even if you don't get it right, you'll still get some good flecking. I want to show you the medullary ray one more time with the bandsaw. This dark line there is the medullary ray. I'm going to mark it. There's all that beautiful flecking that'll be in your work. I'm going to cut it round on the bandsaw. This will be the top of my platter. There'll be a nice center mark right there on the top of my platter. There's all my platter blanks getting ready to rough out. Now I'm going to tap a hole in the top of the platter and use the screw center. The screw center is the most efficient way to attach a platter. Tailstock's always up during this operation. I'll get this revved up to about 800 RPM. I've got a nice hefty 5/8 inch bowl gouge. These are all scraping cuts here at this point. I removed the tailstock to give me a little bit better access, put it right back. Notice my platter blank here is about 75% base. I'd leave it right like that during the drying process. Keep it really heavy for now. Notice what I'm doing here. This is very important for the drying process. I'm going to take the rim and give it a soft arc all the way around it. It'll dry a lot better like that instead of maybe breaking it off in a sharp edge like that. Okay, here I am leveling off the front. I'm going to cut a little dip in there and leave this whole area alone during the drying process. The reason I'm cutting in that direction is to avoid the end grain fiber. Okay, that's the finished roughed out piece. Now here I'm going to seal the entire platter with this new PVA wood sealer. This stuff is incredible. Seal the whole thing. I believe this is superior to the old green wood sealer that was waxy. You can get this stuff at your wood turning supply house. Okay, I'm going to take a pair of calipers here and I'm going to get this dimension here with the chuck jaws closed. This is how I'm going to mount the platter blank. I'm going to use a recess. Okay, I'm going to give us two methods to rechuck this to make our recess. You can crimp right down on the exterior of the tenon there, or you could put the screw back in and screw it in that way, just like this. Your choice. It might work better one way or the other. Whatever it is, you want it to run as true as you can get it. Okay, back to my 5/8 inch bowl gouge, freshly sharpened. Still at about 800 RPMs. Got everything chewed up now. I'm going to make this surface nice and flat. Okay, I'm putting a straight edge here to the bottom, and I want to make sure it makes contact here and nothing in between. Okay, here's my pointers here. I'm going to put these 2 points right in between the center, and I'm going to mark here on the left-hand side, right there, and see where that line will correspond with this area here. You'll notice that the line needs to be shifted and you'll get the right diameter, but always make sure you only touch it with the left side. Okay, I've got my 1/4 inch spindle gouge here to do the recess. We're only going to want to cut in about 1/8 of an inch of depth. We don't want to get it too thin here because that'll make our platter thin here in the middle. We're going to put a dovetail in that direction. Now I flip the tool over. On this side of the tool I have a traditionally ground gouge. And this is all end grain fiber coming into your tool. This traditionally ground gouge will lay that grain down nice and smooth without any torn out grain, so I don't have to sand much in that area. And then I roll the tool over and then create this dovetail in that direction. Now this surface here will be convexed, not concaved, because if we cut it in this direction, it'll make it again thinner, and we don't want that. Okay, the recess is done. Now I'm going to shear scrape the base back to my 5/8 inch bowl gouge. That tool's at a shear plane. It'll leave that base nice and clean. Okay, the recess is all done. The base here is nice and clean. Now I've got a 16 inch platter, and I think the minimum base diameter for this usable piece is going to be 50% of the total diameter. So I want an 8 inch base for the finished piece. Let's talk about the design I built into the back of the platter here. I'm going to say that all well-designed platters have one thing in common, and that's a simple OG curve on the back side here. Now the rim is going to be convexed right like that, and the upper part of the rim will be convexed as well. Now I'm going to put a slight detail right there and then finish up with a nice simple curve. I don't want to get real fancy with beads and coves because the wood is going to speak for itself. Okay, I'm going to crisp the area up around the base with my 1/4 inch spindle gouge. I want this area to be nice, crisp, and clean. All right, now we're to the sanding process. I'm going to use 120 grit to start, and I'm going to counteract the rotation of the lathe. So notice I'm spinning in that direction, and I'm working on the opposite end of the platter here. Touching with that area there. If your drill over accelerates, you know you're in the wrong direction. Now I'm going up, working into the rotation. 120 grit in the areas where I can't get with the power sander. And then I'll go all the way to 400 grit. And I'll be forward and reverse, sanding the whole time. This particular wood has a problem with the grain raising when it gets wet. What I'd like to do when I'm done with my 400 grit is just mist the back side here with a little bit of water and then cut it back down with a worn out grit of 400. And that should solve the problem completely. Back side of the platter's done. Now we're going to flip it around and chuck it up. We'll start back here with my 5/8 inch bowl gouge, just scraping the front surface there. I'm going to address the rim first and then work on the interior. The rim has to be done first because you do not want to remove material out of the inside because that would weaken this area. Notice my tool at an angle here, that's giving me a shear scrape across this surface here. Now I'm convexing the rim area here. Okay, I'm going to design the rim now. I'm going to say that 1/8 of the total diameter of this piece needs to be rim designed. So roughly 2 inches here will give me what I want. You could probably go just a hair smaller. But don't go bigger than that. So there's 2 inches there. Shear scrape. Now, there's my 2 inches there. It shows you. A little, maybe 1 3/4 inches. Now I'm going to crisp my detail up with a 1/4 inch spindle gouge. That area has got to be nice and clean. Now I'm going to cut into the interior here. Back with my 5/8 inch bowl gouge. A nice hefty gouge here. Those are end grain fiber cuts as you get in closer. Now I want you to look at one thing. I think you can see a series of grooves here. Those little grooves there are the length of my bevel. You don't want that. So this tool we know is just for bulk removal. We're going to have to go to a 3/8 inch bowl gouge to finish up that curve to eliminate all those grooves. Here we go. Now we're going to go with a nice fine 3/8 inch bowl gouge to finish that soft curve up. Revved up my RPMs to about 1200 here. On the bevel constantly here. I slightly open up my flute as I come towards the ingrain fiber. It accepts the gouge a little better that way. Stop right before the big wall of ingrain. That's a nice finished cut there. Sandable. Now I can go after this bulky area here. The whole platter is done up to this point. Now you can see me scraping. That's a flat surface. You don't want to scrape up the hill. So just do that flat surface there at the bottom and you'll be fine. Get this all cleaned off. Now I'm just going to use a hefty round nose scraper here just to level up that surface and go to sanding. Notice that the scraper is held at a downhill plunge. Handle is higher than the area you're touching. What you're shooting for now is a nice smooth curve all the way through. The lowest spot is right at the dead center. And now notice I'm sanding right here in the dead center with 120 grit. And I won't touch that area for very long when it's spinning. So I'll be sanding out here consistently, then come to the center, move away. Come to the center, move away. Because if you stay there for long, you'll dig a hole there and you'll lose your nice tool work. So 120 grit, 180, 220, 320, 400 some hand paper, and you're good to go. Well, that's the finished platter, everyone. Obviously, these techniques can be used on any wood, but hopefully I've instilled a little bit of love of oak into you like I have. Oak is a wonderful wood to work, and there's a bunch of it in North America. Anyway, now I'm going to take it off the lathe. I'm going to burn my name into it, the date, and tell you what type of wood it is. And then I'm going to put a walnut oil finish on it, because walnut oil is the best finish for a utility item. Because in the future, you can tell your family member or a customer just to put more walnut oil on it, and that'll rejuvenate it and bring it right back to new. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Happy turning.